Welcome back to Incubate Talent. Today we have a wonderful episode where we're going to stay right here in Huntsville, Alabama, and take a deeper dive in the North Alabama STEM learning ecosystem with the University of Alabama in Huntsville, or UAH, where they're doing some amazing work in cybersecurity, from their Cyberforce Incubator program to different ways that they're augmenting their curriculums across their university to create the next generation workforce of cybersecurity experts. Joining us today to tell us more about this, we have Dr. Tommy Morris, who currently serves as the founding director of the Center for Cybersecurity Research and Education, as an eminent scholar and professor of electrical engineering and computer engineering at UAH. Dr. Morris received his PhD in computer engineering in 2008 from Southern Methodist University in Dallas, Texas, with a research emphasis in cybersecurity. His primary research interests include cybersecurity for industrial control systems and cyber-physical systems. His recent research outcomes include vulnerability and exploit taxonomies, intrusion detection systems, and modeling and simulation of cyber-physical systems for further cybersecurity research and education. He has authored more than 80 peer-reviewed research conference and journal articles in these areas. Dr. Morris's research projects are also funded by the U.S. Army, National Security Agency, National Science Foundation, Department of Homeland Security, Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, NASA, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Engineering Research Development Center, and multiple technology companies. Prior to joining UAH, Dr. Morris served at Mississippi State University from 2008 to 2015, and Texas Instruments from 1991 to 2008. He's also a certified information systems security professional, and hands down one of the best cybersecurity leaders and educators I've ever met. We hope you enjoyed this episode today. Thank you for listening. So Tommy, we are so excited to have you here today. I appreciate you joining us on Incubate Talent.
Thank you for having me. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, so you and I have had the fortunate opportunity of working together for a few years, and I've gotten the chance to kind of see behind the scenes of what really the research center is, some of the different programs that you all have. But how about we start there? Tell us about what is happening at UAH in cybersecurity.
Okay, so I'm the director of the Center for Cybersecurity Research and Education at UAH, and the center is a group of people that are outside of the ordinary academic path at UAH. We collaborate closely with the academics, but we are a group of people that focus on Redstone Arsenal, trying to solve hard problems for Redstone as they relate to cybersecurity. So our center is actually built up. We were founded in 2015, which is when I joined, and it was just me. And since then, we've grown to 45 full-time staff.
Oh, that's great.
And about 126 student workers that also work in the center. And the center is we break it into three pillars, so three areas of concentration. So one of them is research and development. So what you would think of a research center working on hard research problems. So we work with the Army, National Science Foundation, NSA, and others, trying to identify problems in cybersecurity and come up with solutions. Most of that is development. So we'll look at a problem and try to develop a new security control or contribute to creating a security control in some way. Like, for instance, we do a lot of development of tools to help malware analysis, tools to aid the Army in evaluating AI, both test the effectiveness of AI, but also testing AI to look for security holes. So a lot of writing code, I guess you'd say, related to cybersecurity. The second pillar is education, training, and outreach. And so we have a group of people that develop cybersecurity curriculum, mostly targeting K-12. So they actually have built curriculums, one for the National Security Agency that's nationwide called RING. That curriculum is a cybersecurity foundations course that's available online. We even teach that online to a lot of students. They've created a curriculum for Army JROTC, which is a 4-year cybersecurity curriculum that is now in 9 schools as a pilot. And they've even created a curriculum for deaf and hard of hearing students that is available nationwide as well. They also do outreach, so we do a lot of camps through the education, training, and outreach pillar. And so we do something called Gen Cyber camps that are funded by the National Security Agency that are free. We've trained hundreds of teachers in teaching cybersecurity through that program, and also hundreds of students in cybersecurity. Again, targeting anywhere from middle school to high school students, trying to raise their awareness of cybersecurity and get them to come to UAH or other schools and target cybersecurity as a major or as a future career. And then the last pillar in the center is workforce development. And I think we'll talk a lot about that today. But those 126 students that work in the center, we hire them to get them exposed to cybersecurity while they're 9th, 10th, or not, those are high school grades, sorry,
No,
freshman, sophomore grades at UAH, and then keep them on as long as we can so that they're really exposed to cybersecurity while they're students at UAH and get them targeting careers in cybersecurity. So we even pair those students with government jobs and jobs in the defense industrial base here in Huntsville.
And that's the Cyberforce Incubator program specifically?
And that program we actually call Cyberforce Incubator. Of course, we go for a lot of grants to fund that program, and all of those grants end up with individual names so that we can pursue the individual scope of work that particular agency wants, but it all falls under the Cyberforce Incubator umbrella.
We're obviously a fan of the word incubator and believe a lot in developing that talent internally. That's great. And so within the research part of your center, how much of that are students actually doing the work? I mean, it sounds interesting in that you're getting feedback directly from industry and agencies to help solve problems. How many of those problems are being solved by students?
So we have, I would say, 2 types of research projects within the center. So some of the research projects are funded and the budget is built around our staff coming in, looking at the problem and developing some security solution. And so you might have, in that case, 75% of the work being done by our full-time staff and 25% done by students. And then we have a second type of research that is student-led with a mentor who is a full-time engineer or computer scientist. And in that case, it might be a team of 4 or 5 students with one mentor just checking in every couple of days. And so I would say probably 2/3 of the outcome, because a full-time employee can do more because they're working 40 hours a week, 2/3 of the outcome's coming from that full-time staff. But a ton of the work is actually being done by students. So there's not a single project in the center, even in the education, training, and outreach and workforce development, that doesn't have students involved. But there's definitely not a single research and development project that has no students. I mean,
that's great.
They all have students.
Yeah, that's what we want, right? And that hands-on expertise or the hands-on skills and knowledge that they develop solving industry problems directly, that's different than just learning in the classroom.
There's a lot of benefits to the student because they're getting exposed, they're getting on-the-job training, if you will. But there's also a lot of benefits to the customer or to the research because they have a lot of innovative ideas. So a lot of times students are not constrained by their education, if you will, so they'll think outside of the box and come up with solutions that we might not have thought of. And so there's a lot of creativity that comes from having students on the project.
New ideas,
Yeah, new ideas. A lot of times also we'll start a project with a student team, and they might do some preliminary research, and it might migrate over if it really has good prospects for the future as a solution to a problem. That might migrate over and then flip over and become more full-time staff and less students as we turn it into something that's more productized, as we move up, the Army would say, the technology readiness level.
And are those primarily undergrads or are they graduate students that are getting involved in that?
We work mostly with undergrads. Because of our customer base, we focus a lot on national security, being here in Huntsville. So a lot of our customers are Missile Defense Agency, U.S. Army, FBI, and all of those restrict the work to U.S. citizens. And so the undergraduate students are primarily made up of our neighbors' children, and they are U.S. citizens. And so, and it turns out, I don't know if it's the UAH student body, but the students really want to get involved, as freshmen early, and they come up the ladder pretty quickly. They're learning to program in their freshman year, and so they become able to contribute, right away as they get into school. And so, but yeah, they're mostly undergraduate students.
That's great, yeah. And are there multiple majors that are part of that
Yes.
learning pipeline, or is it one central cybersecurity major?
So I think, first of all, it is multiple majors. We recruit students from the typical computer science degree. We recruit from information systems and computer engineering. When I came to UAH, those were the 3 degrees that were the primary places you would go learn about cybersecurity. All of those degrees have a cybersecurity concentration at UAH, but then in 2019 we added a cybersecurity engineering bachelor's degree as well. So we recruit from those 4 degrees heavily. We also recruit from electrical engineering, and we have had students from mechanical engineering, aerospace engineering, and industrial engineering as well. And that really goes to, once you graduate as an engineer, you're a problem solver. You have some background in one of the disciplines, but your employer is not going to allow you just to stay in that lane. They're going to push you out of that lane. And so a lot of students end up in our center because of an interest, and I think that's great because they bring a diverse, set of knowledge to the table in those cases.
I mean, taking the cybersecurity concentrations and putting it in different majors and schools at the university, it sounds like it would have a lot of impact because it's becoming such a common thing across
Right.
different industries and different roles. It's great. I mean, having somebody in a mechanical engineering degree have that concentration as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the things that I see is there are product engineers, product designers out there that are typically in the the mechanical, electrical, aerospace. They're about creating, a thing that flies or explodes or whatever it is here in Huntsville. But there's also the people that know cybersecurity, and we want an overlap between that group because the easiest way to make something cyber secure is to turn it off.
Yes,
but that's not an acceptable solution. Every product that those mechanical, electrical, and et cetera engineers develop has a mission. And we have to, as cybersecurity engineers, allow that mission to occur, just also make the product secure. And so to the extent we can bring in knowledge from the mission side and get the cybersecurity cyber scientist, cyber engineer, information systems expert to understand that mission, the more we can overlap those, the better we can do our jobs. And so having a mixed team is definitely a big part of that solution.
And not to go too far off on a tangent, but those missions should be extremely exciting to a lot of the students. I mean, because especially in this town in Huntsville, I mean, you're talking about aerospace or actually probably some satellite technologies and a lot of different things, a lot of different missions that
Yes.
that are unique, but especially in the STEM field, should be very exciting to a kid trying to find their career path.
Yes, it's anecdotal, but I think a lot of students come to UAH because they understand that we are going to get them into the mission set. They know what we are. A lot of our students obviously grow up in the region, and their parents may work here in national defense in one of those agencies, NASA, which is not national defense, I guess, but Army, Missile Defense, FBI. But a lot of students come to UAH through, for example, space camp. They come to space camp in a summer, and one of my favorite things about space camp is that when you go eat in the cafeteria, there's a big sign that says, "Get more space at UAH." And space camp is nice enough to let students know, hey, UAH is right across the street here, and you can go over there and learn aerospace engineering. A lot of them are drawn into the NASA mission, but then when they get here, they realize there's a lot more than that. You can launch interceptors, so you can still get into space through the Army, missiles, unmanned aircraft, so there's a lot of aerospace here, and then a lot of other things. And cybersecurity, electrical engineering, computer science overlay all of that. And so the students end up understanding when they come, they're, through their unique way, their pathway, going to contribute to that national defense or aerospace mission.
Those pathways are so critical. I appreciate you sharing that connection too with Space Camp, and it sounds like there's lots of fascinating stories there about the connections made from probably the middle school, high school age to understand what is in the STEM ecosystem of Huntsville to help lead them to UAH or even some of the unique career paths that Huntsville has to offer.
Yes, there's a tremendous number of programs in Huntsville to reach out to the high schools and the middle schools. We know that students, when they're in 7th and 8th grade, is when they start thinking, they imagine themselves as an aerospace or engineer or computer scientist or cybersecurity engineer. So we target our camps down at 7th and 8th grade a lot of times to try to influence them into a STEM major early. Once they get into high school, they're often already on a path. But there's a lot of programs like from a lot of companies as well, with camps and internships and things like that, also reaching into the schools around here.
It's wonderful, especially at that age. Are there any specific resources that on this topic? Specific schools or students that might be interested in that program? Is there a place that we could point them to help them get more info?
Well, for cybersecurity, I would say if you're in high school and you want to get involved in cybersecurity, Cyber Patriot is a great way to start. So almost every school in the region has a Cyber Patriot team. You might find it through a cybersecurity class or maybe a computer science class, or you might find it through a JROTC program at your school. But every year, UAH does an award ceremony for the local schools that win medals in the Cyber Patriot program, which is a national cybersecurity competition, by the way. And I mean, we have schools from all over the region coming and getting awards because Huntsville is so, STEM focused, Cyber Patriot is a really big program. But that would be if you want to get your feet wet in cybersecurity, that's a great place to start. A lot of schools also have cybersecurity or engineering or programs. For instance, all the Huntsville city schools have these 4-year pathways where you can focus on cybersecurity or engineering. So those are also great programs to kind of get your feet wet and try to figure out if you like that career field. I would be careful though, as a computer engineer and electrical engineer myself, when you go to the engineering 4-year program, they seem much more focused on mechanical and aerospace and not so much on electrical and computer. So there's more to engineering than what you see in those programs. So don't give up if you're, building a rocket, physically, and what you wanted to do was program or what you wanted to do was electrical engineering. There's a lot more engineering than what you get through those programs.
So tell us a little bit more about the Cyberforce Incubator program. I know it's a big reason why we're here today, and as you and I have been talking prior to this, it sounds like a wonderful program that is worthy of sharing a lot more information about. So tell us about the Cyberforce Incubator.
Sure. So the mechanics of the Cyberforce Incubator program are, as I said, we go out and pursue funding from local government, local companies, and then we also pursue national funding. But once we have that funding, we hire students. We tend to target freshmen and sophomores at UAH and other schools. Like, we partner with a lot of schools throughout Alabama. For instance, we partner with Alabama A&M, Alabama State, Tuskegee. We've hired from University of Alabama, from Auburn, from UAB, Tennessee Tech. So we don't just hire our own, but 90% of them are UAH students. We hire them in. We actually nominate them for security clearance. So they get nominated for a secret security clearance. We do that when they're young because they haven't moved around a lot. They haven't had the opportunity to make some of the mistakes that some of the opportunities they may get exposed to in college that maybe they haven't done yet, hopefully. And so it's a little easier to get security clearance. It happens a little faster when you're 19 or 20. So a lot of students will get a security clearance in 2 to 3 weeks, an interim security clearance, which is all they need to be able to work for a lot of the programs that we then pair them with. And then we give them some additional training above and beyond what they get in the schools, in their classes, and then we put them on a project. So a lot of the projects are what I call short-term research projects. So there would be like a semester-long research project where we have a partner come in, like the U.S. Army. And the U.S. Army might say, here's something we want students to focus on, or a problem that we want them to solve. And the students will go off, they'll spend a week or two reading about the problem together. So going on the internet basically and reading blog posts, reading wiki, reading other books, etc., trying to understand a little bit about the background. And then they come back after a couple of weeks, meet with the customer again, and they propose a solution. And they get some feedback at that time from the customer, maybe targeting them back a little bit toward what the customer needs are. And then they will spend the majority of the time in the program developing that solution. And every week or every 2 weeks, depending on the customer, they'll come back in front of the customer and give them status updates. They're also working with an engineer or computer scientist in our from the center who serves as a mentor. Make sure that they're not idle, because a lot of times a student might get stuck and they presented with an opportunity to go left or right and they don't know where to go, and so they'll stop. So we help them make that decision, keep them moving, and they'll develop for a while and then present that solution back to the customer at the end of that semester.
And is the development coding? Are they doing...
It can be coding. It can be just a lot of times it's actually going and finding open source solutions. There's a lot of our DoD, National Defense, they are focused on their mission, and they need help sometimes just going and looking at where else is this problem seen? Has somebody already solved it, whether that's open source or commercially? And so a lot of times the students, they're not going to write any code until they've gone out and looked, is there something out there? And so a lot of times it'll be, well, we found this and it needs this modification to solve your problem, or if I put this thing and that thing together, they solve your problem. And so it's not always coding. So sometimes it's coding, sometimes it's bringing things together, showing how to install. We've had projects where students, for example, look at how to install intrusion detection system sensors on embedded systems. Well, the embedded system might be a missile launcher or might be, any other type of weapon system, but it might be running a Linux operating system. So we can go find endpoint security solutions, IDS sensors that are available in the Linux community and show that they will work with the single board computer that is actually inside this piece of equipment, and then show, do some testing, actually target some attacks and show that it does pick them up, show how to configure it so that you can offload those logs via syslog back to a SIEM, stuff like that. So it's not always writing code.
And I heard some other things in there too. It sounds like, they're learning a little bit of project management, the ability to work as a team, to develop presentations. Are y'all putting
absolutely.
Some of that thought into that? Yeah.
Yes, they have to work together as a team to achieve, but they also definitely, we actually tend to work on an agile framework, so the students We hold scrums. We don't do it every day with the teams, but we hold scrums, get them to say, what'd you do yesterday? What are you going to do today? And do some project planning. And then absolutely they have to prepare presentations and present that work back to our team when it's their mentor and or their customer when it's the government or a company.
I love that. I mean, even thinking back in my undergrad, the project management pathways or things that we were taught were traditional PMP, Lean Six Sigma, and
Right.
Get into industry, especially in IT or software development or cybersecurity.
Right.
It's the agile software development frameworks, and those things. What is a ceremony? How to do proper sprint planning or backlog refinement, and
Right.
those are some. When it comes down to the execution and how they will likely work in industry, I appreciate that you all are taking them through that because that's
Sure.
important. Yeah.
Right. And then, so a lot of times students will work on these projects, they'll get a clearance, and then they may be approaching graduation at that point. And then we help a lot of them get jobs. A lot of them we don't have to help because once they've got, a big part of getting a job when you graduate is having experience so that you have something to talk about in your interview, and also to get you over this hurdle that sometimes the AI that's scanning your resume says it wants entry level, but also wants a year worth of experience. So if you have something on your resume to kind of break through that barrier, that also helps. So a lot of them don't really need our help. They end up in another job while they're still in school, or they have no problem finding a job after graduation. But we also pair a lot of them up with interviews with the Army and other government customers and local defense industrial based customers.
Well, that hands-on experience in helping solve some of the research problems is no doubt valuable in helping add perspective and skills and things. The fact that y'all are getting them clearances during their undergrad is huge. I mean, that's a major barrier for a lot of companies. There's a cost associated with it. There's time, and I think it's great not just for the student, but it's great for the companies and within our community too.
Yes, I think that getting the clearance has a lot of different ways that it gives value. The obvious one is that student now has a clearance, and so the company doesn't have to pay for it. So if you hire into a company and you don't have a clearance, then you go typically into internal R&D, and internal R&D is paid for by company dollars.
Right.
And so if it takes 6 months to get you a clearance and you're making $80,000 a year, that's $40,000 of pay that they were not able to, pair with a revenue-funded project, if you will, and not to mention your benefits and things. So if you've got clearance on day one, you're making that company profit. You're contributing on day one. Not to say that internal R&D isn't valuable, but you save that company money from day one. It also, we tend to get students secret clearance. We will clear them higher for certain projects, but if you've got a secret clearance, that is a signal to that company that most likely you're going to be successful at getting a higher clearance. And then the other thing, I mentioned that getting them a clearance young is easier because they haven't moved around as much. They haven't, had anything bad happen in their background. But if you get a clearance at 19 and you go in front of a facility security officer and that person forces you to listen to all the things you should not do, it opens your eyes to, well, if I want to keep this job and you're enjoying the work you're doing, it opens your ideas that I've got to stay out of trouble from here on out.
Avoid certain things in my personal life.
And so it actually helps you navigate some years that there's a lot of bad opportunities that come up as well. And so I think it is a very valuable thing in many facets.
Yeah, that's, I mean, there's so much benefit there, I think, like you mentioned, to the students themselves. What else? I mean, I think that we've talked about students and the different skills and missions that they can connect with, different majors. Let's talk about the teachers. Mm-hmm. So what's something that, teachers that are, actively in the cybersecurity space, or even not, we talked about augmenting other curriculums and putting cybersecurity in more things. We look at like the Alabama Cyber School that's, it's here in town doing a lot of that. Mm-hmm. What would you say to a lot of the teachers in sparking some of that interest in cybersecurity and where you'd like to see it go?
Well, the first thing I'll say is I'll serve myself and say, get more cybersecurity at UAH. So send your students that are interested in cybersecurity at UAH. But to be serious, we actually do see our cybersecurity camps that we have in the summers for teachers are not just full of cybersecurity teachers. We see they run the gamut, actually. We see teachers with history and English, obviously math and computer science. We see ROTC instructors that are coming because they've been assigned to do the Cyber Patriot and they want to learn about cybersecurity. So actually our camps try to teach you some fundamentals of cybersecurity. They're only a week long, so you do not become a cybersecurity expert in a week. But what they try to teach you actually is how to adapt cybersecurity to your topic. And so we actually spend a lot of time with the teachers across the disciplines, coaching them on creating modules for their class related to cybersecurity. And then we put those teachers as they graduate our camp into a community of other teachers that have graduated that camp through an online social network, if you will. And all of the modules that have ever been created we've been doing these camps since 2014. So all of the modules in that 9-year period go into that social network and are stored in a database in there. And so those teachers can look at modules related to English or history or math, computer science, and start pulling out material. We also expose, for the ones that are actually going to teach a cybersecurity class, we expose them to those curriculums that we've developed. So when I first started at UAH, the very first grant that we won in the center was a teacher camp. And it was, I actually watched the year before UAH had delivered a teacher camp, and I got to come observe it. And NSA funded that, and they sent actual teachers to give feedback. So the teachers came in for a day, looked at all of the material that we taught, and gave us feedback on it. And what they said was, you just tried to teach a group of K-12 teachers cybersecurity and computer science in a week. Because we just took a lot of the material out of our own classrooms that is actually targeted at a junior or senior in college in computer science,
right? Yeah.
And tried to shove it down the throats of the teachers. So we actually that next year hired a teacher to help us focus our material and reconstruct it in a way that is useful to a teacher. So when I say that and now our education and training and outreach department within the center is full of teachers, okay, that have come in, yeah. They work for us, and then they get an IS or a master's in cybersecurity along with it. So there are these folks that have paired STEM and teaching, and they have real classroom experience. So what we develop when we say we develop a curriculum is all of the slides, of course, but we also develop the teacher training notebook that for every slide there is actual backup material that the teacher can read through with notes that go where you can go to get more information. We develop all the test questions, all of the labs and exercises, and each one of those has all of the backup notes, how to do it, how to teach the teacher to do it. And we give all of this material to the teacher, and I call it a concierge service. They call us anytime. A lot of these curriculums we develop include money that we stand up people that are support. Mm-hmm. And so when the teacher is 2 weeks from now, hopefully they're prepping and they're a couple of weeks ahead, they see, oh my goodness, I'm going to do an exercise on hashes. I don't know what a hash is. They can call us and we can give them training. We also train during the summer. A lot of our curriculums will bring them in addition to the cybersecurity camps, and train directly on the curriculums we've developed. So really trying to, so one message I would give a teacher is, if you've been told to teach cybersecurity, there are resources for you. There are whole curriculums, there is training, and there is in-year support for you that you can take advantage of through UH. And I hope you will reach out to us and get that, because that will help you get through that year the first time you're doing cybersecurity teaching. But it'll also help your students by getting them on a curriculum that is, created by experts and vetted by, the U.S. government and things like that. So.
Right. I mean, it sounds like a wonderful resource for teachers, especially, in middle school and high school, to be able to leverage. And what are some examples of that? I mean, is it math teachers figuring out how to teach cryptography in their class, or, history teachers, talking about some of the different, cybersecurity ties, or what are some examples that you're seeing of those resources in schools?
So on the curriculums and the help that we provide, a lot of times the teachers, it's actually not always the math teacher that gets assigned to do the cybersecurity teaching. Mm-hmm. In a smaller district, they might look out and say, you seem to be really good with computers. You may be English as your normal teaching load, but we think that you would be good at teaching cybersecurity. Or cybersecurity tends to fall at the state level under CTE curriculum. And so that is curricular, it's more of a practical training. And so a lot of times it could be a home economics or some other type of teacher that's being retasked to cybersecurity. So we provide a lot of help to try to get those folks over the hump.
Certainly.
But then often it is computer science or math teacher as well. But still, that doesn't mean they know about cybersecurity. So a lot of it is training. We do see what you also alluded to, like an English teacher bringing it into the English classroom. We see them asking to write essays about about cryptography, or the history of cryptography, or maybe they have students reading about current events related to cybersecurity and writing about those current events. Mm-hmm. So we see a lot of that being embedded into other parts of programs as well.
That's wonderful.
I know ASCTE, they have like history of engineering and history of cryptography classes that they've developed. Mm-hmm. But that's a little more specialized by a school that has the resources to really put together a high impact, high quality cybersecurity program throughout 4 years.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, that might be a good segue then. So let's back up and you have hit on some amazing successes. I mean, it sounds mm-hmm. like the center at UH is doing some fantastic work. The Cyberforce Incubator is a great program. And you even reference some other things happening in the community, other schools that are really doing things well and great success stories. Where is there still work? Where is an area that you would really advocate for, where you want to see improvement specific to cybersecurity, but also just STEM in general?
Well, so I would say that if you live in Huntsville and you're in Huntsville City Schools, Madison City Schools, or Madison County, there's a lot of opportunity across all of our high schools to expose your student to cybersecurity. Some schools have more, some less, but there is cybersecurity in our county, mm-hmm. in all 3 school districts. The further away you get, the less there is. So I know that the governor has an initiative to bring computer science for all across Alabama. We are working to try to get cybersecurity into all of the classrooms of Alabama as well. That may be we created that RING course for the National Security Agency that is a 1-year cyber foundations course. It includes a programming element. So some schools might choose to teach RING instead of a traditional computer science class, or we're working with organizations to expand that. We got some funding from the Lieutenant Governor last year to expand Ring into more schools. We're using that to train teachers. So we're doing a lot of outreach, training teachers about Ring. We also got some funding from the Tennessee Valley Authority that included funds to go train student teachers about cybersecurity in the classroom alongside a regular teacher. So when specifically go into the situation where a student teacher is doing their internship at a school, in that particular situation, train that teacher and that student teacher. So you get a double impact through that program, training two teachers. So I would say the biggest thing that could be done is expanding cybersecurity and computer science throughout the state. We're obviously a STEM-focused community, but as our community grows, we tend to suck in workforce from the surrounding area.
Yep.
And so the more we can get the folks that are 100 miles, 200, 300 mile radius around us, training in cybersecurity, computer science, the more they're likely to go major in those majors and then be able to get the good jobs that we have here in Huntsville. So that would be my primary thing to say we need.
Expanding the successes into the underserved communities. We talked a little bit about cybersecurity challenges in rural areas, rural hospital networks.
Absolutely. Yes, and so we work some, trying to reach HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities. We work some trying to reach the Wiregrass and other underserved communities, but there's never enough. Those communities specifically could benefit. You mentioned earlier, I think it was before we started talking on the microphone, but about programs to bring high-speed internet to the underserved communities. As they get that, we saw in COVID a massive shift to people working from home. So now suddenly they live in the right place to have a technology job. They just need to be exposed and know what computer science is, what cybersecurity is. And if they know that and they know they like it, then they can go pursue a degree. A lot of degrees are moving online as well. They may never have to leave the rural community that they grew up in as long as they've got access to that high-speed internet, access to the degree, and then access to the job. Now, we of course don't mind if they move up to Huntsville and take one of our jobs here, because a lot of our jobs, because of the national security requirement, security clearance requirement, the employee has to come into the office at least some of the time to learn about classified information that they need to do their job.
Yeah. Well, and the future of cybersecurity in some of the rural areas, that's almost its own episode, something that we could talk about. I mean, I think as technology and connectivity is advancing into those communities or underserved communities, it's going to create new challenges, right? It's almost going to amplify some of the problems that are out there, and so education needs to follow very closely behind it.
Right.
You think that that's mostly a funding problem? I mean, it sounds like UAH has a great, curriculum and way to help kind of augment within those. But is that, is funding one of the bigger barriers, or what do you think it'll take to get there?
I think funding is a big barrier. Cybersecurity, even though it's on a computer, computers aren't cheap. A lot of cybersecurity education these days happens in the cloud, so you have to build out cloud infrastructure. Basically, when you take a lot of our classes, you're logging in to a virtual machine that's actually the tip of the spear for a whole virtual network, and you're going and installing security or attacking one VM from another in this contained environment. But that computing environment costs a lot of money, and it costs a lot of money to build it, but also to maintain it. There's definitely a funding issue for cybersecurity. There is a lot of money going into cybersecurity. One trend I'm seeing is now focus shifting over to AI, and so I hope that we can keep some of the government funding that's been there to try to draw workforce. A lot of what you see is funding to create curriculums for cybersecurity at the national level, and then these workforce development programs. So of course, there's a lot of R&D as well, but there's been over definitely my 9 years at UAH, a lot of money available to do the workforce development and curriculum development. I hope that doesn't go away, because one of the things we say about cybersecurity is it never stops changing. We have an adversary,
this is very true.
and they're constantly coming up with new ways to attack us. And so we constantly have to come up with new ways to defend, but also we have to constantly update our curriculums so that they're not outdated. We're not teaching students old information, but we need to be teaching them so that they can get the current job.
And artificial intelligence is a great example of what we're seeing right now, and being able, it's the bad actors are going to be using it, and so how do we use that to help defend or even respond? Yeah.
Yes, artificial intelligence is a great thing. It's going to probably really help from a cybersecurity workforce perspective. It'll automate certain parts of our job and allow the cybersecurity workforce that's there to focus on the less mundane and more identifying the critical need and going and solving the problem. But it also has been a tremendous opportunity for the attacker, because now, if you've heard of script kiddies, now a script kiddie can go write a new malware with AI.
Very, very easily.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. So you talk about the workforce. Let's transition into companies, and I'm curious. I mean, what's the workforce look like today? And some of this will even tie back to the advocacy questions. But what's the workforce look like today? What do you want it to look like tomorrow? When it comes to the companies and communities.
I'll talk about the Huntsville workforce, because I think most of our students are bound for Huntsville. Huntsville is a community. If you think about the Army, think about NASA, we're developing, I call them cyber physical systems when you read my bio. And what I mean by that is weapon systems from an Army perspective, helicopters, unmanned aircraft, missiles, interceptors, things like that. All of those are heavily computerized now, and we have to defend those and the systems they connect to. A soldier might sit at a computer terminal, see an incoming missile coming in from another country or on the battlefield, and launch an interceptor to take that missile strike out, all from a keyboard. So there's a lot of networking, there's a lot of computing. And so what our Huntsville community is developing all of those systems, the weapon system and everything behind it. And so the cybersecurity engineer in Huntsville comes out of school and has to develop the cybersecurity for that system. So that can mean everything from just sitting down with the design engineers and analyzing, okay, what does the system do? How is it dealing with authentication? How is it dealing with encryption and all of the other cybersecurity elements? You can look through, there's hundreds of NIST security controls. And walking through for every single one of them, how is this weapon system dealing with that security control? Does it need it? What is it doing to actually achieve that level of control that's required? So a lot of the cybersecurity engineers get into that, where they're going and overlaying or trying to design in cybersecurity, if we're lucky, from the very beginning on these existing systems. There are also security engineers that are doing incident response in Huntsville. So maybe a new piece of malware shows up on an Army computer, and somebody has to go out and go in and get it off of there, but also analyze it and figure out what it was doing. Who did that? Who put that on there? Does this look like Russian malware or North Korean malware or Chinese malware? And what was it actually trying to do? How long has it been on there? Things like that. What did it actually get? Did it exfiltrate anything? Stuff like that. So there's that incident response question. There's a lot in Huntsville. There are jobs related to testing our systems. So we have like Redstone Test Center, where they'll bring in a weapon system and actually launch a lot of different cyber attacks and look at the impact of those cyber attacks on that weapon system. We also have the Threat System Management Office that goes in and they do ethical hacking against our own systems, trying to find poke holes. How can we get into this system and leave some sort of attack behind that we can go later and actually execute against all of this would be ethically done. We would just show the hole, not actually hurt our own selves, but find the hole and expose it to an organization. So Huntsville is a community defending Army systems, I would say, and responding when they're attacked. Then you get FBI is, now we have over 2,000 FBI employees in Huntsville. A lot of what they're bringing to town is their enterprise data center, digital forensics. They have a cybersecurity organization that's coming down and training related to cybersecurity and other things. So there's a lot of digital forensics and securing the FBI's enterprise networks that'll be coming to Huntsville as well, or is already here, depending on the organization.
And what percentage of UAH graduates would you say are going into this workforce?
We see, as a whole, UAH students, about 76% of the graduates take their first job in Huntsville.
Really?
It's hard to track them as they go much farther than that, but their first job tends to be in Huntsville about 76% of the time.
That's great. That's great. Mm-hmm. And what about are there any improvements there? I mean, within the workforce. I mean, different demographics, male, female. I mean, what does y'all's program look like? As far as that breakdown of graduates.
Well, UAH as a whole is a STEM school as a whole, and so we unfortunately do have more males than females.
Certainly.
Because STEM in general is dominated by males. And there's a lot of research about that. There's definitely nothing innately that makes a man better at a STEM career than a woman. In fact, I'm a big believer in all kinds of diversity, and women bring, just by nature of being not men, I guess, they bring a lot of different ideas to the table and different contributions. And we have a ton of young ladies in our program that are tremendously successful, and a ton of female graduates that have been tremendously successful. But that said, we definitely would like to see a lot more women in the field. At a university level, I would say we're like 55% male, 45% female, but we have programs that are dominated by women, like nursing, that balance it out. At a college of engineering, computer science, cybersecurity, unfortunately, it's much less than that. And I don't want to quote a number because I'll be wrong, but it is, heavily dominated by men.
Much lower than it needs to be.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a national problem, not a UAH problem.
It is.
And there are so many programs trying to expose women and underserved minorities, or just the underserved populations in general, to STEM, to get more of them into the field, because the field benefits from their perspective.
It's a major problem. I appreciate you sharing that, because I'm more out of curiosity in what you're seeing directly at UAH, but also your thoughts on just how we can help solve some of that problem. And that might be a good transition into part of the next question. So I mean, we talked about making that impact or having that spark very early on in kind of a kid's life. You mentioned some of the 7th and 8th grade. So what would you tell the parents, in with some of the programs, if it's not a cyber patriot and kind of encouraging their kid to get into some of those things, but what would you tell parents trying to get their kids interested in cybersecurity and a STEM pathway?
Well, so a lot of times the kids think about, the job and what they get to do. They're hungry to contribute. I think a lot of times when I talk to parents, I want to emphasize, and they want to, is my child going to get a job? Mm-hmm. Yes, they're going to get a job. They're going to get a job that pays very well. They're not going to graduate and sit on the sidelines for a year looking for a job. They're going to actually be employed. At UAH, our students are very often employed as freshmen and sophomores in their field, making good money. I was surprised. One of my sons was a computer science major. He's graduated now, but what he made per hour working in Huntsville as a student. So there are jobs. And then the other thing I would say about them is those jobs have great work-life balance.
Can be done from a lot of places. I mean,
They
you
can be
mentioned some of
done
the
from
security
home
element,
often.
but, yeah.
They cannot actually, I feel like especially in the defense industrial base, but across technology, most of the time the employees aren't working 70, 80-hour weeks.
Mm-hmm.
They might work 50, and you will see people that work more than that, but there's not a general expectation that you're working way more than 40.
Yeah.
And then the last thing that I would tell parents, a lot of them ask, well, what should they do in high school to get ready? So I would say one is that exposure, like doing the Cyber Patriot, going to camps. The other is if they have the opportunity to take a computer science class, go take one so that you learn how to program and see if you like it while you're still in high school. If you have the opportunity to take calculus, take it in high school as well. Calculus is one of the biggest barriers to an engineering, computer science, cybersecurity engineering degree. And so if you can learn that in a setting where you get to learn Calculus A, which is the first class, from August to May, that's a lot easier than learning that same material from August till December, right? Mm-hmm. They go twice as fast in college. So if you can get that first calculus out of the way in high school and then maybe repeat it so that when you're in your freshman year and suddenly you don't have mom there to do your laundry or mom there to tell you to do your homework or dad, you've got this new freedom. Maybe you're repeating a class and some of your natural mistakes are kind of forgiven by the fact that you didn't make it so hard on yourself the first semester.
Yeah, you've seen some of those things before. They're prepared for it. Really, I mean, what are some of those more challenging classes? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So talk about the spark and parents and things that we want them to know. I'm curious. What was the spark for you? Was it at a young age? Was it did it hit when you got in college? I mean, what got you down a STEM pathway or cybersecurity specifically?
When I was a couple of different things. First, I don't know why I did this, but back when we were kids, so I'm 52, my dad got the paper every day, the newspaper, and the newspaper had the classifieds and it had help wanted ads. I grew up in Houston, Texas, and somehow I would look at the help wanted ads and look through the engineering section and be like, ooh, mechanical engineering, $40,000 a year. Aerospace engineering or petroleum engineering or whatever, and I would see all those. So I knew that there was money there. I find that kind of dorky of myself, but there's nothing wrong with that.
It's where the information was.
But yeah, that's what I did a little bit of that. So I knew engineers made good money. And then specifically in school, I took 2 programming courses when I was in high school, and there were only 2. But my freshman year, I got into a basic programming class, so the basic programming language, and I was really good at it. The teacher used to actually have me come, and he would be stumped, and he would have me come help debug other kids' work. And then the same teacher had a Pascal class the next year, and I took that one as well, and it was the same thing. I was really good at it. And then from there, I knew I really enjoyed programming. I started doing stuff. My dad worked. He was an accountant, but I think he always tells me accountants were early users of computers because of spreadsheets.
Certainly.
He thinks, he tells me that the early application that really got computers going was spreadsheets because they helped computerize all of the accounting. And so he always had a computer, and I would play around on that. And I got him to buy me a modem so that I could get online, although I was not a hacker or anything. I'd get online and be like, oh, what's this? It's boring. But I would write programs for him as well.
Really to actually help with some of his accounting and spreadsheets?
Well, not with accounting, but some other things.
Okay.
Like my dad actually went back to law school when I was in high school, and I remember making him a program to help him practice questions. So he gave me all these questions, and I guess it busied me up. I wrote a program that randomly, quizzed him and told him if he got the answer right or wrong.
Well, that's great.
I remember that one.
I appreciate you sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
That's always a fun question. So I had mentioned as we were heading into this, I have had the privilege of working with you and your team for quite a few years now, and can at least attest to the quality of individuals and work that's coming out of your center, and I greatly appreciate that. Huntsville is obviously huge in the defense industrial base.
Mm-hmm.
We've done a little bit of biotechnology research, and when it comes to that workforce, how do you see cybersecurity kind of playing into some of that future? I mean, it's more of an emerging field in technology and industry. Where do you see that going?
Well, I think on the genomic and even all of the medical space in general, cybersecurity is absolutely critical. On the hospital side, we see the ransomware over and over again attacking the hospitals, and the hospitals having to learn to, take care of their data before the ransomware occurs and or handle the incident response, and how do they operate through the impact of an attack like that. So, and then on the genomic side, I think that's a typical example of technology moving at 90 miles an hour and moving faster than, the constraints of cybersecurity might allow. Mm-hmm. And so, there's a lot of privacy concerns around genomic data. But you saw these companies come up like 23andMe, coming to the market as quickly as possible, not necessarily worrying about the privacy on day one. So there's a lot of, I guess you'd say, cybersecurity engineering or development still needed in that privacy space. We see genomics actually going way beyond the 23andMe and just who are my ancestors, but there's forensics related, but obviously there's so much in the future medical area. And so making that data private is really important. And then we also see, right before we started working together, I was reading a lot of articles about cybersecurity in the genomic and the advanced biotechnology space, that unfortunately our adversaries, if you will, the Chinas, the Russias, and other countries of the world, were already in our networks stealing a lot of the information and the science that we were creating. Mm-hmm. So our government spends billions and billions of dollars through the National Institutes of Health, National Science Foundation, supporting research and development in the biotech and genomic arenas, that what these other countries found was, instead of creating our own NIH that costs billions of dollars, why don't we just go steal that information? And so bringing cybersecurity into a space that was also just moving at breakneck pace and locking down some of that data, even some of the hygiene, just teaching the researchers that, yes, this data is critical, this data is sought after by an adversary, and we have to use cybersecurity controls to secure it. All of that is absolutely necessary, and I think that hopefully over the next 10 years, that'll become an industry that is much more aware of cybersecurity, and it is built in from the grounds up on the new tools that are developed.
Well, there's a lot to learn. There's a lot that's already established, like the mm-hmm. work that you all are doing in the defense industrial base, and how we can apply some of those best practices. You mentioned the data hygiene, and it ties directly to human discoveries, and some of those advancements. There's, specific threats to agriculture, mm-hmm. How a lot of our vaccinations are being developed, and pharmaceuticals. Like, it all kind of ties into that umbrella, and cybersecurity is playing catch up. I mean, you've mentioned how, certain things are emerging, the artificial intelligences, but there's also different industries. And I appreciate the work, and the collaboration to help us kind of write the book and address some of those things within an industry that, you're right, is moving very quickly, but also needs some security help.
Yeah, I think actually the biggest thing in cybersecurity, we are always developing new cyber tools to help us be secure. And that will never stop because the adversary never stops. But what we really see, and what I think hopefully 25 years from now, with AI, with all the degree programs, with all the workforce development, we see what I think is a lot of times the attacks are enabled by a lack of cybersecurity in the first place. Mm-hmm. We know how to secure systems, but a lot of them are not secure because either that industry is moving at a breakneck pace and they didn't slow down to implement proper security, or there's just not enough cybersecurity workforce to go and lock down every machine, put all of the best practices in place that an organization can have. And so we need more graduates. What we know is that, in the last 12 months, there were close to 1 million advertised cybersecurity jobs, but we're only graduating people capable of doing those jobs at about 100,000 a year. So there's a huge gap. We've got to get more students into this space and retrain existing folks that might have a different job, retrain them to get into cybersecurity careers.
Yeah, I mean, it ties right back to where we started, right? And how can we help augment other curriculums and majors and career paths that are out there? We talked about the mechanical engineers and those in aerospace,
right? But
even like nursing programs and those that are going down a biology pathway or might be working in a lab. Those scientific career fields need some level of cybersecurity understanding to help protect the future. It's super important.
Absolutely. And so that part of that is pushing it into high schools. We've been pushing to try to do a cybersecurity class that is a freshman or sophomore level at UAH that doesn't require any mathematics so that all majors could take it. Mm-hmm. But also, a lot of people already probably lament the required training they have to take related to cybersecurity and other required trainings to keep their clearance or just to work on different projects. But those programs are probably going to expand, not get smaller.
Right.
And all of that is about teaching the worker that doesn't do the cybersecurity on a day-to-day basis how to be secure.
Yes. Yeah. Tommy, any final resources that you want to call out or specific?
Well, I want to mention
folks?
One thing that I kept forgetting throughout here, and it's a program that UAH has, and there's actually a number of schools that have this in Alabama. But we have a scholarship program called the Cyberforce Scholarship for Service, and I wanted to highlight it, and another scholarship program called the DoD Cybersecurity Scholarship Program. And they're both very similar, but students who are going into their junior year, so they can apply when they're a sophomore, can get this scholarship. And it's a 2-year scholarship that it pays full tuition and fees, it buys them a computer, it requires them to intern in the summer between the 2 years for the government, and then they also get paid, which that internship is paid, and they also get paid a salary while they're in school. So they get paid $27,000 a year as juniors and seniors, and then we also have students in the program that are in the master's program, and the master's students get $34,000 a year. So in exchange for that, the students, so they're getting a scholarship valued at between $60,000 and $70,000 a year, a lot of it going into their own pocket as salary. But in exchange for that, they have to work for government 2 years after graduation.
Okay.
Which is actually a tremendous opportunity. Not only do they, quote, have to work for government, but the government creates what's called a direct hire authority so that the government agencies here, like the Army, FBI, can create positions for them that they couldn't ordinarily
They're going in as a civilian?
Yes, they're going in as civil servants, working for FBI, Army, NASA, all over the country in federal civil servant jobs. And they, of course, get paid for that, too, so they don't lose anything by taking a government job. So they get 2 years as a government civil servant as well. And I personally think that, not only did you get paid 60 to 70,000 in value from your salary and all your tuition and fees and other things that you get, you get paid this $60 to $80,000 a year as a civil servant for those 2 years, and then the benefit you get on top of that, especially in Huntsville, you got this security clearance. We get secret clearance for those CFI students I mentioned,
Yep.
Cyberforce Incubator. When you're in government, they're going to take you up to the highest level of security clearance. So you get this super high security clearance, you work for government, and then the defense industrial base salivates over you because you have this super high clearance, you have government exposure, and then they compete to grab you as you come out. So now you had all this money your junior, senior year, you got a good job, and then you leapfrog past all of your friends that were just in the defense industrial base those first 2 years. Yeah, they made a little more than you, but you leapfrog past them because you were in government.
You got that
had this super
experience.
high clearance. Yeah. So it's a tremendous program. There's 2 of them we have at UAH. It's highly, highly competitive, but we give about, say, 10 of those per year. We collaborate with Calhoun Community College on that. We also collaborate with Northeast Alabama Community College over in Rainsville, Alabama on that. So a great program to strive for, and it can really launch a great career.
And super important. I too forgot to cover something or ask a question as we were going through this. We have covered a lot of the here's how to get, real world experience as you're getting your degree, here's how to get a clearance, and all of these things that will help your credentials to then go get a job. Mm-hmm. Hearing from a lot of students that try and go get a job, entry-level jobs, especially in cybersecurity, actually have a lot of tough qualifications and requirements. What would you say to that, both to the students and the companies? I mean, there's some opinions out there that those job qualifications need to come down a little bit, but also it's a specialized field. I mean, you want there to be some expertise. What would you say to that?
I say several things. Number one, you hear all the time from students, it was an entry-level job that required 3 years experience. Mm-hmm. That's not entry-level. True. The other thing that the specialized part of it, a lot of cybersecurity jobs here in town, in Huntsville and the federal government require certain third-party certifications like Security Plus, CISSP, CEH, and many others. Mm-hmm. And some of that, the companies require that because they have to. Because their contracts require all of the employees working on the contract to have a security clearance and Security Plus or CISP or whatever. And so the students, my advice to the student to deal with that is actually join a program like the Cyberforce Incubator that gets you a clearance. I didn't mention it, we help students get certifications as part of the program. Join that program or get an internship or a cooperative education job.
Get to work sooner.
Yes, yeah. Get to work while you're in school so that you're getting experience on your resume I mentioned earlier, B, hearing from that company, hey, to get the job after graduation, in addition to that degree, you need Security Plus or CEH or whatever it is, so that you've got your eyes on the right target, not just the degree, but also the cert. And then you'll be working, you'll be getting money, which is nice. And those jobs also motivate you.
Yeah.
Because a lot of students get annoyed by having to do the same thing 10 times on a homework problem or a homework assignment. But, when you work, sometimes it makes it worth it.
True. And there's different problems you get presented, different perspectives. You may get a job and figure out, hey, I don't like that. That is not a pathway that I'm going to enjoy. I tell students often, sometimes you got to figure out what you don't love to figure out what you do love, especially when it comes to your career.
Absolutely.
Thanks for sharing that.
I spent the first few years of my career at TI just really looking around, both as a co-op and even after graduation. Mm-hmm. And it took me probably 2 or 3 years to get to the job I really wanted.
Well, Tommy, thank you for joining us here today. I mean, this has been a wonderful conversation, and thank you for all the work that you and your team are doing at UAH. I think it's some fascinating work. I hope that students listening to this, teachers, communities and companies, all of the above, can just look you all up as a resource, look at you as an example to help augment the things that they're doing. So really appreciate you being here today.
Well, thank you for having us, and I hope that all the students and teachers definitely come our way for their degrees.
Certainly. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks again to Tommy for joining us on Incubate Talent to share the amazing work that they're doing at the UAH Center for Cybersecurity Research and Education. Please check out the description of this episode for more information about the UAH Cyberforce Incubator, programs like Ring, Cyber Patriot, camps like Gen Cyber, and more. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to subscribe and share with others to help connect STEM across your communities. Incubate Talent is powered by Techelon Solutions and its partners, a collective of organizations who aim to spotlight the countless STEM programs offered by schools, nonprofits, and industry by aggregating the stories of educators, students, professionals, and communities through digital means. Thanks again for listening to Incubate Talent and helping build your STEM ecosystem.